Hi there, Alan Stevens, International Profiling and Communication Specialist. Today I have with me Christian Grass and Bruno Roda, the founders of the Communications Group. G'day guys, how are you today?
Fine, thank you.
Thank you, hello. We are very happy to be with you.
And you're calling all the way from Zurich at the moment.
Yes, we are calling from Zurich and from a wonderful and beautiful summer.
Excellent. Yeah, well, hopefully we'll be out of our winter very soon. Now, the reason we're talking today is that both Bruno and Christian, their expertise is in understanding cyberspace. And today is really appropriate for us to be getting together and talking about this, because I posted earlier about a TV article about one of the schools in Australia where there've been a lot of both cyberbullying and also physical and verbal abuse within the schools. And Bruno and Christian and I have been talking now for some time about understanding the connection between the analogue world, where we see people, and the digital world, where we can't actually see them, and how the personas of people change in that capacity. And it's by doing that, we can stand back and we can understand why people are the way they are. So to first of all give the audience a bit of understanding about both you gentlemen, can you explain your background, the Communicator Group, and what you've been working on up to date?
Okay, we are working since 25 years now for the industry, especially in communications, marketing and sales. But otherwise, our main topic and our special interest is the society, the change of society and so on. And since 1989, we have an enormous change of our age, because the transformation to a digital age was beginning with the web structure, which was creating in the United States. And this was our start to look certainly the human beings and the change of human beings and the change of their behavior, and what will happen if people are going from an analog world to the cyber universe. And today we are collaborating with many universities, means especially the Humboldt University in Berlin. Our collaboration is our collaboration partner is Professor Dr. Jo Gröbel. He's very well known because he's the founder of the media psychology in Europe. Otherwise, he's also connected with the United States, and this brought us to the MIT lab in Boston, Miss Professor Sherry Turkle. She is an expert in online identities because she says who is a public ego and where are the risks and the dangers. Otherwise, our collaboration with Future ICT and the ETH University in Zurich is important. And we are always charged with many personal aspects and recognitions in terms of industry, in terms of the behavior of people in the cyberspace and so on. And this is really a fulminant, extraordinary profession we are doing for the industry, but also for private institutions.
Excellent. And your different roles, how do you both play your roles in this organization?
Yes, we have a separation.
Really. I'm more the guy who is practical-wise in the cybernet, and I read people in the net. The other thing is I do the picture telling, more the visualization from things. So that's my my science.
Yeah, so you were talking about the emoticons and emojis that people are using as well, and being able to read between the lines on those, so to speak, to find out, to understand the people behind it.
Exactly. If you really read the comments, all this stuff in the net, you can really read also the people in the net.
Excellent. And your role, Christian?
Yes, I'm much more responsible for the strategies, means first the knowledge about ourselves, And then if we know who we are in the cyberspace, or who we want to become, then we can develop strategies for the industry, for example, for a better and a much more precise communication to the consumers in the web, because there we have also an enormous difference between an analog consumer and an web or consumer. And otherwise we are, or I'm in collaboration with the universities in terms of my dissertation. I'm writing now a dissertation, so I'm doing my doctor title very, very late, but it is very, very interesting because the communication changed so very much within the last 25 years. And it's fantastic to look exactly in the heart of the cyberspace, means in people who are moving from channel to channel.
And last but not least, Christian always forget it, he's a literaire too. So he writes novels, books, and so on, but he don't like to speak about it. But he...
That's why we have friends, so that they make sure that we aren't too modest too often. They shine our lights for us, which is really great. And I've really been enjoying our conversations we've been having, because we've been looking at the more we can understand both the analog and the digital, because you can't understand one without really understanding the other, to fully understand people's personalities. This is why I'm really enjoying the work that we're doing together in getting our heads around this. But as you were saying before, that we were talking earlier on, that we need to understand people not just now, because when I were looking at the kids and going, how do they come to be the way they are? Well, we don't know what the next lot of kids are going to be like, because we haven't actually stood back far enough to see where we've actually come from, how we've progressed through all those that time, over the 70,000 years virtually since we've been on the planet. So what sort of work have you been doing to understand the bigger picture on? You've been looking at the flow of how people have been progressing through those centuries. What have you found so far?
So first, I think we have a huge and enormous history of our human beings. We have to look at this history, because since 70,000 years now, humans are existing on our planet. And interesting how they have defined the world, but also the get-together, also their roles. And we had always other rules to respect in different ages, in different epochs we had. And the last 100 years are for us so very, very interesting, because the commercial life was beginning, the advertising was beginning, and we had a change to an industrial age, means the technology became very, very important. And today, or since I told you, since 1989, we have the web structure, the digitalization began. And so I think, Alan, it is important to know what are the goals and the topics of the Silicon Valley doing and creating the cyberspace. Why do we have Facebook or Google and so on? And we have looked behind the scenes, means it could be possible, I say, that the data research of every one of us is the goal of the Silicon Valley in the United States. It could be possible that they have created a principle we had in former times too. The principle is panem et ludi. It's a Latin expression, means if you have your breath and if you have some games, you will be happy and you won't think about the reality and the macro-oriented goals of a Silicon Valley. And so this change, I think, is very interesting, either in the perspective of the Silicon Valley aims or in terms of our change of behavior, if we look from an analog to a digital persona.
And no epoch changed that fast like this epoch change.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because perhaps 1918, you really are able to say what was nearly 1950. But now, 2018, you can't say what is 2050.
that's right.
Yes.
It's possible.
Yeah, well, as you said, we have the, you know, what's being orchestrated in Facebook and other things, what the purpose is behind that. We therefore really need to know our, the way that we're traveling digitally ourselves, how we, you know, why we do the things that we do, or otherwise we're totally at the mercy of anybody else who wants to control us.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's now to actually understand why people have the personas they do. Like, I know that there used to be a saying that an old friend of mine used was that character is who you are in the dark. So who are you when people can't see you? You know, in the analog world, we have our own little boxes. We have our functions or areas that we fit into. We have our social rules and regulations that we fit into those. But then when we go into the digital world, people can't see us. And we can take all the masks off, we can climb out of that box and everything else.
Yes.
So we need to understand where people are coming from, where we're traveling through. We need to know the different personality types, you know, the controlling things that are causing those directions. And you can't really do that from just sitting in the analog world and looking at it from there, or just sitting in the digital world and looking at it from there.
Yeah. I think we have certainly exactly we have the shift of living in little boxes in the analog world to a networked society, and we have the difference from an analog ego to a digital ego. The digital ego is driven by a high self-interest. The self-interest is very, very important, and otherwise we have to know the online or public ego is a flexible self. And flexible self wants to be, every one of us has different facets. We have so many facets also in the analog world, but in the analog world, we have to respect our rules and our norms, and we have to respect our counterparts. But now in the cyberspace, we are free. We think to be free. And otherwise, main question is, why is the cyberspace or has been a lawless space, a lawless room? What does it mean if we are moving into a lawless space where we can show all our different facets? And I think the difference, one of the most important differences is in the cyberspace, we become the person we want to be. And in the analog world, we have to be the person we must be, or we are the person we must be. And this is one aspect. The second aspect is the trying out factor. We want to try out ourselves. We want to learn much more about our personality. A human being which is very shy, for example, in the analog world, mustn't be shy in the cyberspace.
Because you are anonymous there.
Because you are anonymous. And it's interesting, you will get very quick and feedback and response. And perhaps he discovers, oh, I'm also a person who is very interesting for others in the cyberspace. But in the analog world, perhaps he has got another view of himself. And then we can see that all the peoples in the cyberspace like the role plays. What does a role play mean? Where are the risks of role plays in terms of the truth of a personality, in terms of a good and respectful communication between two persons, users in the cyberspace? And yes, and so we can say that we have, as an online persona, we have a multiplicity of parts, of fragments, of desiring connections, and we can do everything. We can show us in such way we can't in the analog world, and this has consequences for the communication, but this has also risks for
Yeah, well, when you said that in cyberspace we can become who we want to be. It's also a case of becoming who we really are coming out as well, not just what we want to be. In the analog world, we've got the rules around us. We're constrained by what we can do. There are certain proprieties. Well, we're seeing in the mob mentality in the schools, that's going a little bit further away from the rules. But in cyberspace and that, we can get right away from the rules. But, you know, if we're feeling very, what would you call it, low self-esteem, we can then act that out. We can let go of that pressure online. So it's probably not somebody we want to be, but something we can actually let go of. When it comes to, we mentioned then the, what was it a moment ago that you said, I think I've forgotten it. It's sort of gone out of my head. But so first of all, we've got to understand that side of it. Then that's right. On the article today, they were talking about the kids were doing this. They were filming it. They'd already planned the attack on somebody. Somebody's already starting to film it. And as they're filming it, they were doing it, as the article was saying, they were doing it because they wanted to get the likes. I think the likes aren't the actual thing they're after. That's something that they just get. It's the feelings behind that. If you talk to a bully and somebody who's been bullied themselves, they go out and they bully others so they can feel better. It's about the feeling they get. It's not about, I don't think it's about the likes. I think it's about at a deeper level. And that's what we've got to start looking at. We've really got to get down underneath, deep into the persona to understand why a person acts the way they do online. So, yep, they might want to become something. They also then want to get rid of the feelings that they've got by taking it out on others. You feel great when you're picking on somebody else. That's the way it seems to be. But also then what's at the very base level as to why we do that as well. You were talking before about looking at structuring rules and things like that. What are the rules and how should we operate in the digital world? But rules only come into place when somebody feels that they need to be within the rules. And most of these people don't feel at that level. So how do you think that we can actually get to some of those people who are caught up in their feelings that deeply, where they then just act out the way they are on cyberspace?
First of all, if I hear that what you're saying, it's for me really an indicator for the public ego, because this is this fear of missing out, because they want likes. They want likes, so they film it, but they don't think about it. Just the fear of missing out. This is one of the public ego. So yeah, that's.
So we've got the fear of missing out, and then on the other side, underneath that, we've also got then how they get rid of their stress or their angst that they have. So it's, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in all of this to really fully understand all the connections. And so the work that you've been doing so far with some of the other groups, what sort of things have you understood so far in that area?
First, I think we have to learn the communication in the cyberspace. And so we have also to create new rules for a better communication in the cyberspace, because we had all these rules in the analog world and we had our norms and so on, but it's nearby a little bit stupid that we haven't in the cyberspace. We haven't in a lawless room, and all these different aspects we have told about could be really dangerous and a risk for especially young people. And so we have to create new rules for a better communication.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, it's moved so fast. I think for all of us, I know when I got involved in social media, it was a novelty. It was being able to connect with everybody. It's grown that fast, a little bit like a kid going into a candy store and having free reign on all the lollies that are in there, and then ends up sick. And I think that's virtually the way that we've gone into social media. We've rushed into it so fast, and we don't know what we're actually doing in there. And we don't know the forces that are behind it as well and how that interacts on us.
Yeah.
So we need to understand that side, but we need to understand, what drives us as well, why we change our personas from one area to another. And that's going to be very interesting research.
Yes. Yes, but we have to respect other facts too. We have different parameters in the cyberspace. For example, think about the fact we have no sense of smell in the cyberspace. We have no haptic. We have an enormous anonymity. So means how we want to feel something if we can't smell, if we can't touch someone. But this is, this is important, and this is also a task of the science to prove what are the other behaviors we are looking for in a counterpart, an anonymous counterpart. So this is interesting to know and to respect if we want to create new rules and perhaps a charter of communication in the cyberspace, because we know much more. We have to respect much more. Other facts are that we are today in a so-called post-factum age. Means nobody wants to know the truth, but everyone takes an opinion. We are speaking about opinion leaders in the cyberspace. Opinion leaders, they are explaining the opinions, but we have no truth, and everybody who takes an opinion for truth of something is also in a certain risk. That he believes something what is not true, and that he repeats a public opinion which is not the reality. And so you see, I think there are so many factors we must look for if we want really to help people, and this should be the aim, to get a better knowledge about the cyberspace, to get another impression of the verity of online personae, and to get also or to move in a better communication with others, and therefore we are working, and we want to engage us really.
And the really dangerous is really these opinions. You talked about bullying. Imagine if a young person get these messages and don't get deeper in these messages and just take an opinion. So he's frustrated. He's whatever. Yeah. If he deeper inside, maybe he's laughing. Yeah. But don't do that.
But otherwise, we have also to look for such public behavior, like the President of the United States, who is speaking about alternative facts. Means alternative facts are lies, and so everyone is allowed now to lie. And in the cyberspace, a lie is much more easier than in the analog world, and because I'm anonymous. And if we are living in such kind of age with fake news, alternative facts, as signs of a post-factum age, the opinion is much more important than the truth. Nobody's looking for the truth. Nobody is interested in someone in the cyberspace, and parents are allowing the kids using the cyberspace 24 hours a day. So the influence of the mass media, the change of mass media is also very important to know. For me, it's not surprising that, or I'm really not surprised that we have big, and then we will get enormous problems with the cyberspace if there is nobody who will stop it and who will help people to create new rules for the cyberspace communication.
Yeah. And I know that, as we have our rules in society, even though there's not a lot of punishment for going outside those rules, people will follow those rules to a certain degree because they become the norm. So having rules in cyberspace gives people a guideline, and most people then if you've got no guideline, you don't know where to go. It's like, as I was saying, if you're traveling from A to B, if there's no roadways, there's no lanes or anything else, you don't know where you're going. It's like having a child and not giving them any rules. They don't have any boundaries. So therefore they have no guidance, and therefore they get frustrated because they don't know where they're going. They can go in any direction. So by having some rules, and the majority of people will follow those. And that's one thing that we do need. And then that will then make it more difficult for those that want to go outside the rules. It will have an effect on them. But we need to understand the cyberspace and as to why people do what they do to be able to then write the right rules for society to follow.
But how can parents give their kids rules for the cyberspace if they don't know the cyberspace?
That's it.
So
and see,
it's really important to inform the parents, the schools, and all this. How does it work in the cyberspace?
Because if you don't understand something, you're easily caught up in going the wrong way. One of the things I noticed in that news article was one of the girls that was talking there, she'd been getting messages from other kids saying, well, kill yourself, you don't deserve to live and everything else. And then she started self-harming, and she was also plotting her own suicide because she took on their opinion, as you said, and that became her reality. So
exactly.
there's a lot of problems in those particular areas. So we've got to understand it a lot deeper than we do at the moment. You were going to say something, Christian.
We have. We should think about the fact that with the cyberspace, we have empowered the democracy. This was a positive aspect first. Why? Because the power of every one of us is much more higher now. We are knowing, in question marks, we are knowing much more about industry, about products, and so on. We have a new form of freedom to explain something, to create shitstorms, for example, if something is wrong with brands, international brands, and so on. So means we have got a certain power. And I think this is also important to know, because every one of us wants to have power. Even if we don't say it, but it's one of our interior wishes and desires to show a little bit our personal power, and the cyberspace allows us to show it. And we can't use the same form of power in the analog world, and because there it could be risky. But here we and so what is the consequence? People are not only able, but now they try something. They try out. The trying out factor, due to an enormous power we think to have in the cyberspace, is very, very important. We try out our personality, or the different facets of this personality, and now we have to respect the social life, because every one of us has two parts: the individual person and the social person. We have the individual and social person, and the role of the community in the cyberspace is another one than the role of a community in an analog world, where we have a contact face to face. And so a third aspect must be respected, and these are the moods of people. The people are in different moods, and they are trying out their personality. They are not any longer shy to say something about themselves.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
They get very quick feedback of this community. And what does all these aspects mean in terms of our psychology, and in terms of our acting? What does it mean? What does it mean? And I think, Alan, we can say, okay, this is very theoretical, but Bruno is someone who's always in the cyberspace.
With our media analytic tool, we also can find out the sentiments from the people. So if you really have the sentiments, the moods, you really can react. So that's why I said to the beginning, I can read people in the net. Because if you read their moods, their sentiments, you can exactly communicate with them. And just the last thing, we talk a lot about the negative side of the cybernet, but we have to create it in a positive cybernet. It's possible. If you give them rules, then it's possible to make.
Because we have so many chances in the cyberspace, so many. And this is because Professor Sherry Turkle, I mentioned from the MIT lab, she sees the cyberspace also as a danger. We do too, but as well. But on the other side, we see also the chances we have. The chance we have for our personal development, but not only for the private people, but also for the industry. The industry, for example, this is the same, Alan. The industry is shocked about the digitalization. They are scared about everything they have to do there. We have every day 3.54 billion people cyberspace worldwide. This is a big, huge market. And if you respect, and this is also our task, to create rules, strategy, methods, and instruments for the industry, you can also make big business. And so we need, on the private sector, we need also these kind of rules for a secured communication. And this is the reason why we have to know much more about the cyberspace, the structure of cyberspace, and the online persona we have there.
Yeah, well, the cyberspace can be used both ways. It can be used for the good and it can be used for the bad. And as we know, if we do it the right way, it can be beneficial to humanity. As you mentioned before about in the digital world, people acting out different things and being able to get immediate feedback. By understanding them in the analog world and as to why their frustrations are, because we can't act out as quickly in the analog world and get feedback as fast. We've got to wait in some cases to understand why people are the way they are in the analog world and the pressures and the things that are holding them back. Now, I know that when they first started with trying to get bullying out of the schoolyards, they started teaching the older kids to protect the younger kids from the bullies. But nobody worked on the bullies or the reason why the bullies were there in the first place. So the bullies went quiet because they couldn't get to their victims. But they went immediately to cyberspace and bullying went through the roof. So because they were then able to act out what it was that was frustrating them. So we actually created a problem by not addressing the actual situation in the first place. Where did this come from? Why are the bullies that way? So understanding in the analog world, we'll then understand why they do the things that they do in the digital world. And this is why it's very important to be able to look at both sides together and get that bigger picture of what's happening. Because if we don't, we're just going to have more and more problems. And because we're focusing on the downside of it, we're missing the potential of the upside of the cyber world and how we can use that to our benefits. So we really do have to understand both sides very effectively.
Yes.
So it's really interesting as to where this can all head from where we're heading here. But I'm really enjoying the talks that we're having and looking at how we can actually understand both worlds and how they interact with each other. Because the answer to the problem is not just in one world, it's in both worlds. Because we're going from one world to the other world. We're going from that persona we put out with the mask that we put onto everybody, what we do in the quieter times, in the smaller groups, but then how we completely change when we get onto the digital world. As I said, you get somebody who's really nice in public, they get into a car, next thing you know, there's road rage. And that's all they got between them there is a small piece of metal where we can see through the glass, but their whole persona and that changes. What happens when they go to the cyber world where they can't be seen at all? And they've got that, as you said, that anonymity. They're anonymous to what's going on.
Yes, I think we we can't separate the analog and the digital world as two completely different systems, because we are one and the same person. Today and now we are in the analog world. There we have our roles to show, to live, and then a few minutes later we move to the cyber universe. And the cyber universe doesn't mean only Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, but so many public rooms and spaces you have there. And so I think we should also try that people get a better understanding for the next for our counterparts,
for the fellow human being.
Yes, for the fellow human being, either in the analog or in the digital world, because we have forgotten something. In my opinion, we have forgotten the respect of others, the altruism, and I think this is a keyword, or will be a keyword we are working for, and we would like to develop. It's the new altruism. The new altruism means new because we need an altruism also in the cyberspace, in the online communication, and altruism is something we have not more in our
on the radar.
In our consciousness. We have to, I think it is absolutely important to think about our norms and values we have learned, and this is the main topic of the future we will create. We can't have a future without an ethic. We need an ethic. We need social rules for both parts, the analog and the digital world. But I repeat, if you think on a lawless space, if everything is allowed or possible, even the catastrophes we are looking in the dark net, or we could look in the dark net, we will find any information how to construct a bomb and so on. Everything is possible. We can do what we want. We'll find what we like, and therefore politics, education, institutions, and so on, they must have an appel, must say, now people please collaborate and develop new altruism. I think this is one of the most important things.
And especially for the young people.
I know we talk about collaboration, and that's the big move at the moment, but I realise a lot of people who are talking about it don't collaborate. Even in the analog world, with all the different groups that are working towards anti-bullying, they're not talking to each other. They've all got their own little shows and they're doing that. Nothing gets done until you bring people together. My whole business is based on collaboration. And, it's the only way to grow and to actually do something positive. When you bring all the people together and they work together, and that means we're going to do it not just in the analog world as we're doing, trying to do at the moment, but bring it into the digital world as well and bring the whole lot together. And that's why working with people like yourself is so much fun to me. It's so enjoyable because, I'm talking to people with like minds. We're talking to people who are looking for change as well. And we've got, when I'm talking to people like yourselves, I feel that there is a future in it, as opposed to just seeing the downside of everything and going, I think I'll just pull away and leave it all alone.
But otherwise, we have also to look for the status quo of our society. And the status quo, what does it mean? There are many people who are bored. There are many people who are frustrated. Why?
They have no goals.
Yeah, because they don't see the future.
That's it.
Bruno told me in the 20th century, if we had the year 1918, we could realize what we will have in future means in 10 years, in 1928. But today, in the year 2018, we don't know what will happen in the year 2028. So it's
so fast.
different. Also for, I say, also for the industry and so on. Nobody knows what will happen. Everything is very quick. So it means the society is driven by own interests. It's driven by a certain egoism, which
no
is
altruism.
Yes, no altruism, and egoism, which is really not easy to understand, and I think very, very, very dangerous. Otherwise, everyone is not very motivated. We are not motivated to really to do something, to create something, to create a new get-together for solving our problems of this century. We are living now in the 21st century. It's another century. It's a digital century. And we are developing on a society 4.0, on industry 4.0. What does this mean? And so I think it's time to give us the hand for creating something
together.
And we have, perhaps we could explain it, we have also an interesting collaboration with the Future ICT in Zurich. The Future ICT is an institution which is working for alternatives to the main topics and goals of the digitalization powered by Silicon Valley. What does it mean? The Future ICT sees that if we won't create social projects, if we won't give every one of these 3.54 billion people in the cyberspace a certain responsibility, an own responsibility to do something with others for solving main problems like resources, natures, climate, and so on, then we will lose. We will lose. Because, why? Because the digitalization will control us. They will create new currencies like attention and so on. And you will be dependent of these digitalization. You won't be free in the cyberspace. Everyone thinks, oh, now we have a new possibility to be free and so on. But I say
it's an illusion, isn't it?
It is an illusion, and I am convinced, Alan, that Google, Facebook, and so on have created a principle which is very well known by the 18th century, and it's called panem et ludi principle, means bread and games are important for people. If you have bread to eat and if you have games, you won't think about the reality, you won't think about the problems of this century and so on. And you know why we are talking about that? Even if we know, okay, in the cyberspace we have different online personas than in the analog world. We have other problems there. But I think we should start a new collaboration and respectful communication for solving problems of the century, and this would be also very interesting for the cyberspace user.
Because the people have to know, end of this century, we have 3.1 billion people too much on this planet for our resources and so on. So that's the reason why Google and so on control us, or try to control.
We need a new counterbalance, I say. We need a counterbalance for the superordinate goal of the digitalization. And the counterbalance could be the social projects for everyone in the cyberspace. We should awake the responsibility of people. We should awake their feeling that they are able to create something. And you know, if you would do that without being a dictator of the cyberspace, but if you would animate the people for doing much more of these projects, people would forget all these drama options they have in the cyberspace. So I think we could solve many, many problems by doing that.
That'd be good to be able to do that, but in the analog world, people aren't taking responsibility there either.
Yeah.
Always somebody else's fault. You know, somebody else will do it. It's not my business. It's somebody else's. It's always somebody else's fault for something that happens. So when we've actually seen them, we're doing that. It's going to be even more difficult in the digital world to be out where they're not seen, to actually get them to take responsibility. So a lot of what we're doing in the digital world, we have to come back to the analog world and start making things better there as well.
Yeah,
and that strong foundation.
Yeah, exactly. As we founded this company, the Communicator Group, we are best friends. We founded this company. We had 3 goals. It's to help, inspire, and to entertain. That's what we want to do with the Communicator Group. So maybe a lot of people should that.
Yes, and the society, I think the society needs a new social ethic. It needs something, it needs much more understanding for a transformation into a new age, means the digital age. And our goal is really to help people to know much more, and not only to take the opinions of everyone in terms of a mainstream opinion leader system. We need to know much more about structures of the web, because the web structure is built on the consumption, you know, everything is only an allurement, how to buy something and how to create a new business and so on. This is a danger. We have to see that. If we don't respect and see that, we can't react in the right way. And therefore, my thing is we should understand much more and know much more about structures, personae, about human beings, collaborations, and so on.
And hopefully the work that we're doing together, we're going to get our head around that a lot more effectively. As you said, it was about the Communicator Group, is about inspiring people. So I'm hoping that the talk that we've had today inspires the listeners. You said about education and hopefully, well, and entertainment side of it. I'm definitely getting entertained by working with you guys, because it's giving me fresh energy for the stuff that I do, because I really love sitting there and talking to both of you. And if people have seen the previous conversations we've had, and that, I think there's a lot of potential in what we're putting together. So I really want to thank both of you for being here today and having this talk with me, and for sharing your passion in particular, and the research that you're doing in the background, the other people that are collaborating on this, MIT and other groups as well. So together, I think we might be able to achieve something quite spectacular. But anyway, thanks again for coming on today. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much, Alan. It was a pleasure for us being with you and talking about all these different aspects we should respect, and perhaps we will find solutions. I'm sure, I'm convinced.
And I'm looking forward to our next interview.
Well, we'll be chatting again very shortly, and that looking at the research that we're putting together. So, you know, again, thanks very much, and we'll see you later on. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.